Hello everyone, welcome back. Apologies for the technical difficulties. We are going to check right now to make sure that we are back in business and that you can hear us. It's important that you're able to hear us and you're not just looking at us having a random conversation with ourselves that none of you can hear, right?
Audio helps. Hey, we're bringing the rain right now. How's that?
Oh, it is. It kind of feels nice.
Bringing the rain, yeah.
After standing out in the sun today. So once I get the go-ahead, the okay that there is audio and that you can hear us and that we are back. Let's see. Oh, we've got sound. Hello, everybody. Hi, everyone in the chat. We're back in business, so we can start from the top and have our conversation once again. So welcome on in again alongside Ryan Wood. I am Olivia Reiner. It's lovely to see you all. Right behind us here at Lambeau Field, the Packers had their first real action on the field since January. No, it was not a game. It was yet another training camp practice. We'll bring you the latest from practice in just a moment. Before we get into that, I want to remind you, as always, you can be a part of our conversation. Head on over to Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Perhaps you're on a smartphone right now, like I'm using, to check all of your lovely questions and comments. Once we get to some of our own points that we'd like to discuss today, we will get to some of your questions as well. To start things off, Ryan, practice sounded a whole lot different. It wasn't quite as robust as it typically is in years past when there are fans present at Ray Nitschke Field for practice. However, the Packers had the next best thing, which was some crowd noise. Ryan, how did the noise inside of the stadium today impact what the players were doing on the field?
It was a surreal type of setting because it sounded a lot like a game during a practice, even though there was no one in the stands other than a few of us reporters. So this is what the players are going to deal with. You know, Matt LaFleur said something today about the NFL is kind of giving the Packers and teams the understanding that there's going to be some level of ambient noise during games. It's not just going to be completely silent, which frankly would be even more eerie, I think, if it was. So this is something they want to adjust to. It's different than having the music blare. I mean, it's just an ambient noise, just kind of a buzzing. Almost, I think annoying would be one way to put it. It's kind of just an annoying buzz that's kind of hanging over everything. But it does help to present some type of a backdrop that is more normal, even if you're not going to hear it from the stands.
I only had a slight bit of a headache walking out of Lambeau Field today. Like I said, not as annoying as potentially a home crowd in Lambeau Field. However, it is the next best thing for the Packers to practice to. The big emphasis of practice today for head coach Matt LaFleur was the 2-minute drill. The premise of the drill, the offense was down by 2, and they just had to get within field goal range, especially for rookie quarterback Jordan Love. How was his first live 2-minute drill?
Well, Jordan Love scored in his first 2-minute drill at Lambeau Field. And it didn't count, but you still take that over the alternative, obviously. The situation was 50 seconds on the clock. They're down 2, 1 timeout, and he had to get in field goal range, and they were able to cap it off with a 48-yard game-winning field goal from Mason Crosby. And everything didn't go exactly right. I mean, they had to use that timeout after a sack. They had to overcome some things, but they were still able to get down and score, which is obviously what they're going for. So, you know, it's very small in the grand scheme of things. Long term doesn't mean much, probably not, but it's a nice way for the rookie to get his start.
Jordan Love and all of the rookies of the Green Bay Packers have a long way to go. They didn't have rookie camp. They're not going to have preseason games. However, especially for Love, head coach Matt LaFleur has said that every single day he wants to see a little bit of growth. Today was exactly that. Let's move into some of the injury updates out of camp today. Offensive lineman Rick Wagner left practice early with an apparent injury. We do not know exactly what the status of his injury is just at the moment. In addition, defensive lineman Montravius Adams, who left practice early a couple of days ago, has still not returned to practice. Additionally, wide receiver Devontae Adams and outside linebacker Zadarius Smith, although they are not practicing, they were present at practice to watch and observe. Ryan, at this point in training camp, how concerned should the Packers be about the state of some of these injuries?
I think for Zadarius Smith and Devontae Adams, not at all. David Bakhtiari is another guy that's kind of worked in and out after going down a couple days ago. Those guys don't need a lot of time to get ready. They know their bodies. They know what they need. They're vets, and they're some of the best players in the NFL. So I don't think there's any concern there. Montravius Adams is probably the most concerning, just because he was getting an opportunity to be a starting defensive lineman in the base defense before he went down. Just the same opportunity he had last year, and then he went out and he played fewer than 200 snaps. The longer that he's away when he has this opportunity to be a significant contributor on defense, the more concerning it is, because he's a guy that he's obviously got to continue to develop. And then Rick Wagner, I did not see him leave. My understanding is that he was able to walk up the tunnel, which is a promising sign. So all in all, we'll have to see. We don't know anything about Rick Wagner, but I think that the top of the roster guys, it's very low amount of concern for them.
We will certainly, if we get any more information going forward about the state of the injured players, we will relay that to all of you. Ryan, I want to move into some discussion about the offensive line. Let's particularly take a look at the right side. Billy Turner, when the Packers brought him in, he told us just a couple days ago that they liked that he had experience at other positions along the offensive line. He played tackle with both the Denver Broncos and the Miami Dolphins. He's had some experience on the right side of the offensive line so far throughout camp. How confident are General Manager Brian Gutekunst and head coach Matt LaFleur in Turner if they were to turn to him at right tackle?
I don't think they'd be putting him out there if they didn't think he could do it. And I don't think they'd be messing with it if it wasn't a very serious thing. So it's far too early to know how it's going to shape up. There's essentially 3 guys for 2 spots, and it's really between Lane Taylor and Rick Wagner. And Billy Turner, I don't know if they look at it as his best spot will determine who is on the field with him, or whoever wins the battle between Lane Taylor and Rick Wagner will dictate where Billy Turner plays. Probably a combination of those two. But the versatility there, it's big. And if, for example, they're able to go Billy Turner and Lane Taylor, you're able to kind of preserve more tackle depth with Rick Wagner available on the sideline than you would have had with him on the field. And then you want Billy Turner at guard, and who's coming off the sidelines, there's an injury at tackle. So it's 3 guys for 2 spots, and I think it's really early. But as far as Billy Turner goes, I think they certainly are very serious about him being a potential tackle candidate.
Speaking of Lane Taylor, he addressed the media for the first time in quite a while since he spent the majority of the 2019 season on injured reserve with a biceps injury. Left guard Elton Jenkins was able to solidify his spot on the offensive line. He was a standout rookie. He didn't allow a single sack through all the games he played last season. Brian, how likely is it that Lane Taylor is able to make an impact on this offensive line this season?
Yeah, he said something interesting about going to the right side, because if you're a Packers fan, you know Lane Taylor in his time with the Packers, he was a left guard, right? He said his whole life until he got to the Packers, he was always a right guard. He played on the right side the entire time, growing up through youth football, high school, college. So because of that, it's almost been kind of like returning home for him. It's something very natural for him. I think that helps. And if you look at the fact he's played a lot of football, and he's a 3-year starter. He's one of the most veteran players on the team now, which is kind of amazing to think, but he's been here since 2013, came in with David Bakhtiari, 30 years old. He has a lot of experience that he brings to the table, not just the versatility. So yeah, I think a year ago, if you go back to when he tore his biceps, I don't think we thought we'd be standing here discussing the possibility that Lane Taylor could be a starting right guard, but that's where we're at, and it's a very real possibility.
We'll keep an eye on the entire offensive line as training camp continues. As head coach Matt LaFleur has said, he's looking for the best combination of 5 players to start along that offensive line. Let us move over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We've got a question here from Neil. Neil asks, what do we think so far about new defensive backs coach Jerry Gray? The Packers defensive backs have finally had the opportunity to meet Gray in person, not just through a computer screen on Zoom meetings throughout the virtual offseason. What are some of the early returns on Jerry Gray?
Jerry Gray was a very opportunistic safety. I think he had almost 30 interceptions in his career. And it's good for a guy like Adrian Amos that he's very solid, does a lot of things well. One of the things that he wants to grow in his game is being more opportunistic and being more of a ball hawk on the back end. I think having a guy who's done it and has the credibility and the track record of Jerry Gray probably helps with that. Jair Alexander's had nice things to say about Jerry Gray. We haven't seen it on the field yet, but he just having that veteran wisdom of a guy who hasn't just coached a long time but played a long time. That's something that the guys really do. They tune into.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to see exactly how he's starting to fit in, and I believe we'll actually hear from him tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. The Packers are off, no practice tomorrow. However, we will get to hear from a number of the position coaches, so make sure you're following along. PackersNews.com, Packers News all over social media. We'll have lots of updates from those press conferences tomorrow. Thank you very much, Neil, for your question. Let's see. John asks, how did Jordan Love score? I'm assuming John's referring to the 2-minute drill, and that ended in a Mason Crosby field goal.
Yeah, so he got the offense in position to score. They were down 50 seconds to go, one timeout. They were able to get the field goal to win.
So, yes, that was the objective, and he was able to succeed on that objective. Let's go into Tyler's question. Tyler asks, which first or second year players are doing well? Ryan, we are only a few days into training camp, a few days into padded practices. How soon is too soon to be making judgments, especially on some of the first year players?
Well, it's definitely too soon, but I think that we've seen that the versatility that Matt LaFleur has spoken about with Josiah DeGuara, we've seen that in spades. He plays everywhere. He had a good day today, too. He had a really impressive rep in one-on-ones against Raven Green, where he got jammed really good. Raven Green's a compact guy. He jammed him really good at the line of scrimmage, was able to get off the jam, leveraged his way to the right sideline, then leaped over Raven Green and secured the catch. Looked like a really natural receiver. And that's not exactly something I expected to see, because you think of Josiah DeGuara and how they talked about him, you think fullback, you think H-back, you think some inline tight end and maybe some flex, but he looked like a natural receiver, and Matt LaFleur said that that's a position he thinks he can play some receiver. He looked like it on that rep. So it's way too early to know what kind of player he'll be, but you just see the come to fruition, how they describe these guys. You see that on the practice field. And then, I mean, how can we not be impressed with the size of A.J. Dillon? My goodness, this guy's got tree trunks for legs. It's impossible to evaluate running backs without live tackling. That's literally the basis of their position. But that's going to be fun to watch when they can live tackle, because he's a big dude.
A lot to look forward to as the Packers progress, get closer to the start of the regular season. Additionally, Matt LaFleur has not decided yet exactly whether or not he wants to implement live tackling in these training camp practices. The Packers aren't going to be having any preseason games. They want to give them as many reps as possible, as many close to live reps as possible. However, it remains to be seen whether or not they will be tackling. So, something to keep an eye on going forward. Let's move on to Ivan. Ivan asks, which position battles threaten veterans the most? Thinking about some of the positions that are a little more competitive heading into the 2020 season, which players that are coming in for the first time may have an opportunity to make an impact in their respective areas of the team?
Well, we mentioned the right side of the offensive line. I think that might be the biggest position battle in camp. Backup quarterback, Jordan Love had a good day today. Tim Boyles looked really good basically every day. He's the best I've seen a backup quarterback look that I can remember in my time on the beat going back to 2014. That's the type of camp that he's having early. He's looked awfully good. If he can continue that, I think you're talking about a guy who's going to be on the 53 and a guy that very well, early on in the season at least, might be that number 2 backup behind Aaron Rodgers. The other side of the ball, it's everywhere. In the defensive front, who's the number 2 inside linebacker? It's, Burks has been the guy that's, no surprise. He was drafted in the 3rd round, and he's just never stayed healthy. So when he's healthy, this is the job that he's drafted to play. It's no surprise he's getting that opportunity, but how long will he have it? I think that's a fair question. Defensive line, outside linebacker, finding depth there is critical for this defensive front that was the reason in a lot of ways that they didn't get to the Super Bowl last year because of the run defense. So that's an area to watch for sure.
Speaking of the defense and the inside linebackers in particular, Jason wants to know, how did the linebackers look? I suppose you could be referring to the inside or the outside linebackers. However, let's stick with the inside linebackers right now for a moment. The Packers brought in free agent Christian Kirksey in the offseason, who became the presumptive replacement for former Packers inside linebacker Blake Martinez, now with the New York Giants. The thing about Kirksey is he hasn't started and been healthy enough to play in a lot of games the last 2 seasons. How has Kirksey looked alongside some of the other Packers options in Oren Burks? And of course, there's some depth there with Ty Summers and 2020 draft pick Kamal Martin.
Yeah, the question with Kirksey is, can he stay healthy? Because if he can, then he's the leader in the room by a long shot. He's the only real proven commodity that they have at that position. Oren Burks, like I said, that's right now that's your number 2 guy, and we'll see how long that lasts. The Packers are giving Ty Summers a look at being a contributor on defense. Ty Summers made the team last year as a rookie because of his special teams ability. That's why, and that's something that's not going to go away. He's still going to be counted on in special teams, but 7th round pick last year. He's got a year now under his belt. He's got some solid footing with that, and they're giving him a look to see if he can be a defensive contributor. Lastly, Kamal Martin, he's got some decent range. He showed some good range today. He's a rookie, just getting his feet wet. I mean, it's just the beginning for him, so it's really premature to say much about where he factors in. But you can see why he was drafted. He had a good day today.
There was opportunity last season in the inside linebackers room to capitalize on playmaking, and there's the same opportunity going into this season. We will see exactly who the Packers decide to put in at their starting duo at inside linebacker. Let's move on to Joshua. Joshua asks, which is more likely, 5 running backs or 6 defensive linemen? We've been having a pretty lengthy discussion, Ryan, about how likely it is that the running backs room might be a little bit crowded, possibly. It seems like they are pretty top heavy with running backs Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams. Then there's also Tyler Ervin, Dexter Williams, A.J. Dillon. It's a tight room. How likely is it that they're able to keep all of those players somewhere on the roster?
Well, the question's really Dexter Williams, right? Because, count it out, I mean, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, A.J. Dillon are locks. Tyler Ervin's as good as a lock, because not just his running back, but he's a return specialist. He is the returner on this team. So that's your 4th. Dexter Williams, what do you make of him? They drafted him last year in the 6th round. They like Dexter Williams. I think he's got a lot of potential. They like his fit with the way that they like to run the outside zone, his one cut and burst running style. Pass pro is going to be a huge thing for him. He struggled today in pass pro. I had them keeping 5 running backs on my projected 53 going into camp. I'll keep it there, but it wouldn't surprise me if they try to get Dexter Williams through to the practice squad either. I think, Ryan Gutekunst said this today, and I think it makes a lot of sense. This year, teams are always like this, but this year especially with the lack of preseason film, he thinks that teams are going to just kind of rely on their own for practice squad spots, and that's what he's hoping for. That's his guess. It makes sense. Usually you got a guy in camp because you like what he can bring. You want him to further develop. So it's always a risk. If you cut a guy out of camp, you subject him to the waivers. The other team can claim him. The Packers have had that happen with Taysom Hill. They've learned that the hard way. I think they like Dexter Williams. It would not surprise me if they try to get him on the practice squad instead.
Yeah, we'll see exactly how they decide to construct the roster going forward. All right, everybody. I think we're going to call it a day. We will not be live tomorrow. However, we will be back when the Packers start practicing once again on Saturday. So if we didn't get to your question today, make sure to come back wherever you're watching us on our social media channels, and we will hopefully get to your question next time. Make sure you're reading PackersNews.com for all of your training camp updates. Follow us on all of our social platforms. For Ryan,